always learning and growing, attracting the right people, and keeping your vision in focus every day. This is the Brian Covey Show.
Hey, what's happening, guys? And welcome back to another edition of the Brian Covey Show. So today I'm super excited to bring my new friend on, Doug Wood. We got to meet in Nashville a few weeks ago. And I'm sure you're going to be just as excited and really just engaged as I was listening to what not only Doug's doing, as he's got his own podcast, he's a speaker, business coach in the health and wellness space, all these things here. He's written a book that I know we're going to unpack this one, Church Boy to Millionaire. I know that's going to come up. And I just want to really kind of frame this up. And when you think about your life today and how things are integrated, one of the things I took away that I know we'll unpack with Doug is how do you live this fully integrated life with your faith and your family and fitness and finances and all these things that we're all trying to do. And the goal of today is just to equip you with either some inspiration and motivation to help you take that next step, or to actually educate you on some areas in your life that maybe we can help you just take that next step forward and win where you are. So I'm excited for this one. I can't wait to learn myself. Doug, welcome, my friend.
What's going on, Brian? I am excited to be here and look forward to unpacking some of this.
Dude, and I love your energy. The first time we met, and I want to talk about this because I think this is often overlooked just in life. When you meet people and you have an opportunity to connect with somebody, many times before you even speak to them, there's this energy that's transferred. And you have that when you walk in a room. In our small group we did, and we sat down with you and Thea, when you spoke on stage, like you connect with people. And I'm just curious, is that something natural? Have you built that over time? And just your thoughts on how we connect through that vibe and that energy?
Well, I know for a fact when I started operating in my unique ability, and I feel like Tia and I and my wife, when we hit our purpose stride 12 years ago, it's hard not to operate in flow with natural energy, because you're doing what I believe God put me on this earth to do. And so how can you not have energy and passion for getting up every single day? Because you're literally, your feet hit the floor in the morning and you get done with your workout and you're like, you know what, what's next? Let's go. And so, no, it's not hard to manufacture energy because I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm paid to do it. And people, paid me to do it. And I think that right there should be the biggest clarity point, Brian. I think for most people, if you're lacking energy, you got to look within before you start looking around without. And I had to make some key things and some key changes within my own body, and then in my own spirit, my own mind, and my own heart. So no, I don't have to turn it on.
And you can tell when it's real or it's fabricated. And I can sense that about you. And so before we unpack some of that and dive into it, I'd love to go back a little bit in your journey, because when you shared your story in Nashville, I had heard bits and pieces of it. You shared with your dad owning the furniture store, and then how you took that over and you went through that and the ups and downs. And anybody that's owned a retail shop or been part of a family business will probably relate. There's some good times, but there's a lot of tough times. And how you took that part of your story and then you transition, because some people may not know that, and where you are today may look great to them, but they may not see what you went through to actually get to where you are.
Right. Well, I had to stop and go, am I living my life? Am I living my future life? Or am I living somebody else's life that they either encourage me to do? Or am I living the life because the diploma on my wall, which I don't have one, by the way, but I know a lot of people, and I coach a lot of people that feel this obligation to do something because 10 or 12 or 5 years ago, they graduated with a degree, or their family got them into the business and they're supposed to be the second or third generation. And I had to deal with that. And I like to say I kind of had to have a funeral for my past. I needed to go to my family, understanding that they may not see my future vision. I didn't want to exactly continue the family legacy of the furniture business. And it was hard. I'm not going to say it wasn't, because we feel this obligation to others. And I had to set myself free and say, you know what am I here? What am I put on this earth to do? And for me, it was adding value and life in others, not just operating in a sales position or own a furniture store, which was great. It had many rewards. But I also know for a fact that it came at the cost of my family. It came at the cost of me being my best human. Me and my spirit had become dead. And I had to come back alive again, because I wanted to be the dad and the husband that I feel like I was meant to be.
I love that. As you shared that story, I thought about so many people probably listening to this or going through in their life, like they feel like many times it's their parents or someone else has said, hey, you got to go do this because that's a successful job. That's what it looks like to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. And not that those are bad by any stretch, but I'm just saying many people carry that burden, like you said, of I've got to go be this position because this is what success looks like. And you've kind of carved this path, which is pretty interesting because most entrepreneurs today are trying to find where they are, and you left, right? And you got this business and family business and you started carving this out. When was it you kind of had some clarity, and how did you find that clarity of, okay, this is where like my purpose meets my passion and what I'm actually skilled to go do to do something different?
Well, I stumbled into what I do now because I help people transform their lives through taking their health to the next level. And a lot of times it starts with physical health, but now I probably say I play more of a role of a business coach, business leader, in guiding a lot of the coaches to lead and win. But for me, it was, I had my breaking point in 2008, early 2009, to where I just felt like, God, I don't know if I can keep going. I don't know if I can live this same life year over year. And some of you guys listening right now, you might be, you might be able to relate to this. But I would have, if this was, I would say to myself, if this is the American dream, I don't know if I want it. Being a business owner, having 15 employees, yes, having seasons of really good revenue stream and income, and other seasons of scratching your head saying, what am I doing here? And I had, a lot of times we as business people listening to this, we can kind of wear the hero cape of I'll figure it out. I've got it. Toughen up. I mean, everything on Instagram is work harder. And I don't necessarily have seen a lot of people thrive when they're working harder, because often it would come, Brian, at the cost of their family or time with their kids or things that truly matter most to them. And when we sacrifice our own boundaries, or I should say our own values, at the cost of an income providing, especially in the world and the economy and, things that are going on here in 2021, there's a lot of change happening in the world, and we can say, oh, if I can just get through this deal, if I can just get through this, next 3 months, it's all going to get better. And we realize, yes, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but we pay a huge price. And I literally realized I saw my physical health falling apart, Brian. I said, I have got to take care of me for a short season. And so, I reached out to a buddy that had been successful in taking his health to the next level. And I said, man, would you coach? I said, would you guide me? I mean, everybody needs a coach in life in the 4 to 5 key areas that matter most to them. The problem is most people just get business coaching or have a podcast coach them, which is good, like this. But are you getting marriage coaching, parent coaching, finance coaching, spiritual coaching? Or should I say health coaching? And I reached out and had somebody, and I lost 65 pounds in a very short amount of time. And I tell you what, my spirit, man, that didn't just bring my physical life back alive. It brought my spirit back alive. And I'm like, I want to help other people doing this exact thing. And so it took me a year or two to transition. Like I say, hard conversations with family, but I did what I had to do, because I believe when something good happens to you, you have an obligation and you have a duty to share it and help others do the exact same thing. And somebody did something really cool for me, and I'm like, I want to get into this industry and help people win physically and spiritually, not just, sell them something that they'll need again a year or two from now, and there's no meaning or there's no exchange of value taking place.
Man, I love how you describe it. You can sense the passion. I think many of us, we've hit that rock bottom, and some point in our life, we have these two choices we can make and just go all in this direction and realize it's not going to be a quick fix. I mean, even losing the 65 pounds, like it becomes this life journey. But I love how you've integrated this into your life. And as I was preparing for this, that word just kept coming up. Doug, like I watch what you and Tia are doing, and then you can just see how integrated it is. Like it's just who you are, and you mentioned social. I got to plug this because this was just funny to me. Like you'll see people on social and you meet them and you're like, that ain't the same person.
Nope.
You guys are the same people, and even more real, I will say, in person, because you get that energy that you can only have in person. And as you've been kind of putting that together, the health and wellness side is something I'd love to talk about, because it seems to me that is a starting point for most people. That I'm with you on, like, your faith gets stronger. You understand, like, your body that God gave you, the one body, is stronger and you can do more things. Your mind is more clear. You start to function. Do you think that's, and I notice you do the morning, you think that's the starting point for a lot of people of, how to get the other gears and going, just get their fitness going.
Yeah. And I want to come back to that because you said something that's a real trigger point for me, Brian. And when I had a massive, I should say, awakening. I would also say, people, the key word this day is, the deconstruction of, X, or deconstruction of my faith. Well, you can't have a deconstruction without a reconstruction. So some people love to live in the deconstruction, but you're reconstructing something. And in 2017, doing by what I call the world standards, was doing very well successfully, financially. Everything I had, I was Maslow's hierarchy. I was, well out of survival and into service of mankind, and I was still dealing with a lot of mental things, or maybe things that had bubbled up, because once you get your survival needs are met, you realize that there's a lot of other things going on in a human. And I was, again, by the world's or podcasters or Instagram influencers standards, I would be successful, but I would look around and I would go to some of these same conferences that you do, Brian, and I would look around at the speakers, and I had been a speaker at a different event right before it. And I'm going, the person that is on stage right now is not telling the full story, because the full story, you still have dark days. No matter how great your life is, you still have question marks. You still struggle in key areas of your life. It is not all, Rolexes and Bentleys or grind, hustle, because something's paying the price if that truly is what's going on. And I was disappointed, Brian, that I felt like I was being only given part of the story, because I was living what I felt, the life that everyone aspires to live. But why were these people not talking about the real things, the stuff going on behind the scenes, the morning challenges, the evening challenges, the week to weeks where you don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. And, the dad struggles, the wife struggles, the mom struggles, the list could go on. Addictions. Okay. And I'm like, nobody's talking about what I call the real stuff. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to share the real story, the authentic story, the untold story. And I'm going to write also the book that no one is supposed to write. So yeah, I wrote Church Boy to Millionaire, and it's my story, but it's actually a 25 independent chapter book to talk about the taboo subjects of faith, of money, of addiction, of business, of the price you pay, or that are you willing to pay, or that you don't always have to pay to have what the world might call success. And so, yeah, I wrote it for the everyday guy, but I want to talk about the real stuff, and the stuff that most people won't talk about on stage. Well, I'll talk about it. I know you'll talk about it, but a lot of people won't. And I know that's why we have such kindred spirits here, to really connect. And I think that's a key start, because yes, I believe morning routines are incredibly important. I mean, every single day, my alarm goes off like clockwork at 5:15, and I do not push snooze, because I'm the first person that counts in the day, and I'm not going to push snooze on myself, because that's the first meeting I will cancel is not going to be on myself. And I don't cancel meetings in general, but no, I'm going to get up and I have my alone time, and then I have my workout time. I just got back from the gym, hour and a half ago. But yes, things like that are important, because the spirit man, the physical man, must be aligned for you to turn around, and then in this case, me give back to the rest of the world. I've got to make sure I'm right. And if I would say, encourage all the listeners right now, man, take time for you. Be more selfish. Like, it's okay to be selfish if it's getting you right, your heart right, your spirit right, your mind right, so you can be the best service to others the rest of the day, and also still have a lot in the tank left for who matters most when you get back home in the evenings and on the weekends.
I love that. I had a friend of mine shared, he's like, man, you can't pour from an empty cup, Brian. He goes, I want you to think about that when you go home to your family, when you're with your team. If your cup isn't full and you're not putting in the things that matter. And I remember that just vividly. And it's this kind of reflection point. And as you were talking a minute ago too, what's interesting, we might've been going through this at the same time. About 4.5 years ago, I had one of those kind of breakdown moments, all this stuff. You start questioning like who you are. What am I doing? Like, why am I here? What's this? What's that? All these questions. And I found a mentor at that time, and it was a wonderful season. And I'll never forget, he took me to my darkest points to actually understand we all have this dark and light competing, and to understand that darkness can actually be used for good. And I never had anybody explain it that way. I always thought we got to suppress that. Like as men, like, you have these feelings and like, you're not supposed to have all these other feelings. And you're like, for the first time, somebody said, hey man, that's who God created you to be. And you're going to have both.
That's right.
And learning to embrace that, but also recognizing when I'm triggered, when I get angry, when I get frustrated, when those things happen, to recognize the patterns. And as you're talking about that, it just kind of took me back to that, because for all the listeners listening, like until you've really faced those demons and confronted and realized what they are, who they are, and how to live, you're denying the truth, like who you are in many ways. Right. Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk about that, because this is something that I think our society is struggling with today. I mean, I see this all the time, is like people that they just have it all together. You see a speaker and you're like, okay, surely they didn't go through all that. They just made it. It was easy. I don't know one of those people yet. I've yet to meet one that's on the other side without going through that.
Yeah. And I think there's a level of consciousness that you must awaken to. I mean, we can all relate to driving our car, and you and I both can drive down to our local Starbucks, probably with our eyes closed, but we can do it without even knowing we did it, because we have these places that we drive to that it's just, we are literally on autopilot. And that is the exact same way all of our lives are right now. We have those areas as fathers and mothers. We have those areas in our marriage with our spouse. We have those areas in our business with employees that we are operating on autopilot, which is often why we feel, as entrepreneurs listening to this, that we're living the same year over and over again, and sometimes hitting benchmarks and goals. But honestly, if you look back the last few years, tell me a true year that you remember, obviously with the exception of 2020, but do you really remember the last 10 years of your life? And the ones that you do remember is probably something major happened that disrupted your flow. Well, we have the ability as entrepreneurs to disrupt our flow every single day by being conscious and recognizing what are our habit loops, what are our habit triggers, what are our depressed points, what are our high points, what do we do when we travel, what do we do when we come home from travel, there are habits that are ingrained into us, just like driving our car. And a book that really helped me, and I'll share it with y'all, is The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by Jim Dethmer. 15 key, the guy is just on another planet, Brian. Yeah. And I read his book about 3.5 years ago, really awakened me. I talk about some of his stuff in my book, Above the Line and Below the Line Thinking. And you got to get 15 Commitments to kind of experience this. But what he did was he really helped awaken my consciousness. So everything I'm doing, I'm recognizing, I'm checking in with myself. Where am I at? What am I really doing? What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it at? What do I need to execute in? Or what do I need to pull back from? And I tell you what, when you go through this life with consciousness, you really become I believe you shift atmospheres, but also you become a force to be reckoned with, because you're doing everything with intent and you're doing everything by choice and awareness versus, man, where'd that week go, right?
Yeah. Remember that movie, Limitless? Did you see that?
No, I don't think so.
So you should check it out. So Bradley Cooper's in it. And the whole thing is basically, unfortunately, it's a drug that's created, but it awakened all of this superpower in your brain that's accessible. And a lot of it's subconscious, but a lot of it's there. And you're talking about that, I'm thinking that, and you watch that and you realize what is possible inside of here when we're dialed in. And to your point, like all this multitasking and people are on autopilot. And I mean, I find myself doing that some days, and it's like, snap out of it. And this movie was all about that. What if you were able to tap into this deeper level of consciousness and subconsciousness, and you were operating in this state of flow, and you saw things that other people didn't see, and you made decisions in such a way, but you were aware of all this. And it actually kind of piqued my curiosity of like, what is possible? Like what could we do? Like, how do you learn the skills to tap into that? Along your journey, what have been some of the skills or things that you've been able to tap into that you're kind of saying like, hey, this year was different than that year because I was able to find this or tap into this kind of superpower?
Well, one of the areas was in 2018 when I took my family out of the country 3 different times. At the beginning of the year, we went to Israel to see the Holy Lands for 10 days for spring break. Wow. I would say an extended spring break.
Yeah.
I had my kids in the best private school in Arizona. I came back from that spring break, and all the teachers did was give us crap for missing a couple days on both ends of spring break, and all they wanted was the homework of my kids, and they just went to the Holy Lands. I mean, to a great private Christian school, and they got pretty much reamed, and so did we for missing extra time. That summer, we went to Europe and spent 35 days in Europe, booked a one-way ticket as a family, and just lived in Europe for a summer, and it was amazing memories. Fall, we went to Singapore around Christmas break, and I realized that one of the biggest disruptors that year was I had my kids in the best private school, but I felt like I was spending more time unschooling them because I was sending them off to be taught, and I would say even institutionalized by people who have not been in the game in 30 years. They went, they got an education to teach kids, and now they are trained for the world because they have not left the bubble of teaching in 30 years. Right. Therefore, if Amaya doesn't have her homework in to check the box for the grade, therefore Doug and Tia are not parenting right because they're taking their kids and they're missing school. And I'm like, where did school get this idea? And I kind of went back and, 50 years. And I'm like, man, 60, 70 years, we have summers off for the farming industry. I mean, okay, farming's evolved too. Yeah. And so one of the biggest ones was I want to disrupt education. So I started an online school. So I think it's just, that was a highly, I'd done a lot of trips before that, but I'd never thought about it until early 2018. I'm like, why do we have summers off? Why do we get so much crap as parents for having these, for taking our kids or missing school to, again, are they really being taught for a world that exists today? Or are they being taught for a world that existed maybe 30 or 40 years ago? And I said, well, you know what? Versus trying to disrupt a existing education system, why don't you create the education system of the future? So we did it. So here we are in our 4th year at Valor Global Online. And so those are just little things that I'm always looking for to disrupt my own patterns. But also if I'm having those challenges, Brian, just like the speakers online, I'm sitting there in the audiences and at these big conferences, and nobody's talking about the taboo subject. I'm going, wait a minute, there's got to be more of us that are struggling with the day-to-day. Well, I'm going to talk about the day-to-day. And my book actually sold 15,000 copies its first 6 months. And what's crazy about it is everybody messaged me. Even now, they message me on Instagram and Facebook, and they're like, dude, me too. You struggle with this? Me too. Like it's this big Me Too movement. I'm like, no, I'm just talking about the real things that you're not going to get on the day-to-day. So I always, all of you listening, and I know, Brian, you already do this, but then look for patterns that have become consistent to you until they're starting to become inconsistent to where you're like, wait a minute, is this the way it's meant to be? Probably not. So why don't you go create it?
Oh, I love that. That's something, looking for those patterns because they're around us. And too often, you're right. It's almost like we are in that just train of thought. And I love with your book, I want to go back to that because there are some subjects that obviously come up and most people will not dare to even speak of or talk about or anything. And especially like we both grew up in church. My dad was a pastor and Christian psychologist, all this, like some stuff you were taught, don't talk about. Mm-hmm. Don't bring it up. As you started to write this, what were some of the chapters that were the most influential to you that you felt like stuff? I mean, I know it's your book, so it's hard to like pull them out, but what are some of the ones that you think are connecting the most?
Well, probably number 1, chapter 6, the Millionaire Mindset. And that just really starts by unpacking, debunking the myth that a lot of us grew up not to talk about 2 to 3 subjects: money, sex, and sometimes religion in public.
Yeah.
Well, if you look across America today, Brian, what are the 3 biggest issues in our world today that I would say the world is struggling with? Sex, money, I should say lack of it.
Yeah.
And, I think everyone's on their own faith walk. So I'm like, why is money bad? Why was I told not to chase it?
Yeah.
Why was I told money's the root of all evil? And then I actually went and read the verse myself, and it's the love of money. And I'm like, man, what? Oh. Seems like every time I got money, I wanted to give it away. And I realized that money is just magnifying the heart.
Yes.
So if the heart's impure and unhealthy, then yeah, people are going to do some things with money. But what you do with a $20 bill or I do with a $20 bill is different than someone else might do with a $20 bill. But money itself, the actual $100 bill or the $20 bill is not bad.
That's right.
It's what it can do and what the doors it can open when used for greatness and good. And so I just started there, and I talked about my family in the book, but they didn't know because they just learned it from my grandparents and they learned it from their grandparents. And so here we are, often passing on ideas, thoughts, schemas to our kids that it's what we heard and we're repeating. I mean, whoever said money doesn't grow on trees, but why do we say it? So I just started like calling Taboo. And then I started talking about the addictions that were in my family and that my struggles today aren't just my struggles. My dad dealt with them and my grandfather dealt with them, whether they talked about them. Because again, thanks to Ancestry.com, you find out a lot of stuff about your family after they pass, man. It's like, whoa, dude, our parents were going through the same crap or worse than we were, but it was, don't talk about that. We keep secrets in our family. And so I just said, you know what? I'm gonna write this thing, and I'm also gonna write it for the everyday Joe that doesn't like to read. So I put like a lot of quotes in it.
I love it.
Just a lot of pictures, a lot of things, so you could download it off Amazon or off of Audible and have me serenade and read it to you. Or if you like more of a coffee table book, you could just pick up and start at any chapter, because they're really, I would say, I say controversial. They're not that controversial, but some, might find them like, holy crap, Doug talked about this. Yes, I did.
Well, and it's cool too. I love the way that you said that, because that was what I found right away. Is like, you could grab a chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters, independent of each other, come back to a chapter later in seasons, and you could share a chapter with someone that's going through something. And these are always interesting, because when you launch the book, is there anything that surprised you? I mean, I know a lot of people have reached out to you, like you said, which does not surprise me, because I think you probably wanted to hear in some type of validation, like, man, am I the only one? Am I on this island thinking? And like, you brought it up. Anything that surprised you that was a common theme or that someone said?
A lot of people, because of the name of the book, Church Board and Millionaire, I knew it would turn as many people on as it would off, because everybody judges a book by its cover.
Oh yeah.
So really the theme of it was, I might as well give them something to judge. And if they dare open it, they'll realize the book is actually not that much about money. It's about mindsets. Yeah. And so, probably I love my favorite DMs to get, Brian, are the people who bought it in secret off of Amazon Prime, and they didn't want their family to know. So they literally had it sent to like a PO box, and they're reading it in secret because it's has been somewhat of a controversial book in their faith communities. Like, don't touch Doug's book, it's blasphemy.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my gosh, you're describing my life. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to tell my family that I've read it and that they need to get through the cover to actually read it, because you're describing my family tree. Yes. And how to, more than anything, how to change it, and how, okay, this may have happened to me. Maybe I didn't come from a healthy family, but a healthy family will come from me. And so then how people can implement it and pass it down. That's maybe one of the surprises I didn't see coming, but it's very cool too, because these stories are just, man, they're just so powerful. And I didn't write the book to sell 15,000 copies. I think it sold a lot more than that now, but I wrote it for the one. I wrote it for the other Doug out there. I wrote it for the Brian that might have had these same questions I did. And I was just like, well, I'm going to talk about it, because I needed to free myself up by getting this out. And if I pissed everybody off doing it, well, at least I was freed up. And what I found was everybody was thinking the same. I was just the first to talk about it.
How often does that happen? So many times we're so reserved and like, I'm afraid what people are going to say or not say. Well, they're saying something either way. Yes. Might as well tell your truth,
Give them something to talk about, baby.
I hear you talking about this. Something that I'm just curious your thoughts on this. Why do you think it is? Because you coach so many people and you're working with people all the time. Why do you think it's so hard for people to change?
I think they feel like they have to give up something. And often they're like, well, that's fine. But what I mean by Bob Proctor talks about the terror barrier and how we, my wife has a movement called Kick Fear in the Face. And really, and many people say like everything you want is on the other side of fear. Well, it's easy to say, but I think it's the same reason, Brian, that somebody who, and I've been told this by people that have left an abusive relationship. So I'm speaking out of not experience, but out of coaching a lot of people who have been in a physically or an emotionally abusive relationship. And I would ask her, I said, why didn't you leave sooner? She goes, because Doug, I knew how to control the pain that I was in. I didn't know if leaving on the other side, it would cause more pain or there was more unknowns compared to I learned how to manage my chaotic life.
Yeah.
And finally, when she did get I should say, many people have gotten the boldness to leave and to protect themselves out of taking the risk that it could get worse. They've actually found like, whoa, there's a whole new life on the outside of my pain. And I think that's what we're all in some way, Brian, resisting change.
Yeah. Is
because we've learned how to manage our, let's just say our X amount of income a year or our life. If I really make these massive choices and changes, who's it's going to disrupt? How much flack is going to come at me? And what if it doesn't work out? And then I'm really stuck and screwed because I've, made myself accountable publicly or, whatever. And so it's just easier to just make tiny little changes, but that really don't move the dial forward. I mean, if you're going to move a boulder or a boulder out in your front yard, like it's going to take 5 guys to probably get that thing or women, get that thing rolling. But once that thing starts rolling down a hill, one person can actually push it.
Yeah.
So to make the big, massive thing that needs to change in your life happen, it's going to take a lot of force, not just like, well, I'm going to start getting up 15 minutes earlier. 15 minutes early ain't going to do it.
Yeah.
It's going to take some big change to the underlying structure to get things in momentum and motion. And it's often going to disrupt, your own status quo and possibly others.
I love that answer too, because I often find that it's just kind of a theme that came up as I was listening to you. I'm like, okay, because people, I think inherently they want to change. They recognize they can do something different or better in their life. And they're like, yeah, but what's on the other side of that? Like, what is the sacrifice going to be worth the payoff? I had somebody tell me that. Is it going to be worth me spending the extra time over here, making more sales calls, doing all this stuff you're telling me to do? Am I going to make more money? It's like, there's no guarantee, but I do know this. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're not getting a different result.
No.
Right?
No, you're not. And T and I talk about this a lot in our business. A lot of people come to us like, Doug, just tell me what's the one thing I should be doing. And I'm like, well, they're telling me everything I should be doing. Like, just tell me like, what are the most important things I should be doing? I'm like, pick one.
Yeah.
And be super consistent at it. I mean, the reason that T and I, and then, when I was at Coach Burt's, the reason he had me talk about creating community and building connections is because T and I realized we actually have sucky systems. we're not that organized. We're not going to be the most polished people ever speaking, writing, or doing anything. But you know what? What we do that I believe we're the best at is making people feel validated, valued, encouraging others, and creating connection points to people. And we can do that more consistently, more passionately, over and over and over and over again, because that is our sweet spot. So, and I realize there's other people that are also successful too, and they're super organized. Guess what? They're going to err on the side of being super organized, but they're going to be more consistent in being organized than everybody. It doesn't take much, my friends that are listening. This thing does not take much. It takes 1 or 2 good things that you're already good at, and you need to beat it up over and over and over again. You got to be so consistent with those 1 to 2 things that you know how to do versus waiting 3 weeks and go, oh man, I don't know if it worked. Well, at the 3-week mark, it's barely even getting tested. Don't stop now, right?
It's like just getting started. People look, it's like, yeah, I'm a month into it. Yeah, most of us are years into this when you see what you see today. And there's lots of stumbling along the way that never gets talked about, to your point. Right. So I'm curious, like, you're a routine guy. I see, and even as you're articulating today, you're going through these things. How do you, in some ways, kind of keep that balance of, you got your workouts in the morning. I know you spend time in the business. You got the school stuff happening. Obviously, you got your family and you got all these things here. Are there things that you've found, okay, this is how we operate together? Because I see you and Tia doing a lot of stuff together, and probably some people out there thinking, okay, how do I do that? Like, how do I do more of that? Like, operate in my sweet spot more often?
Yeah, well, I think it's got to start with, what are your values and what are your priorities? And for us, 12 years ago, when we recommitted our life to excellence and to level up and going pro, there was a couple things that were never going to be on the table for sacrifice. And for us, it goes, in our family, it goes God, family, and then our goals, which is usually, working in our business.
Yeah.
What does God mean? Well, for us, we have every Sunday morning, our family does go to church together, and that's super important to us. For the most part, we take Sunday afternoons and evenings off as a family day. Monday evenings, we actually have a family connection point for 30 minutes. We just get together and we talk about our week. As a family, there's no agenda. There's just 30 minutes is a connection point. 7:30 every single Monday night, you will find the Wood family sitting in the living room, just saying what went well about your week, what were your challenges. DJ was clear down to my little boy Phoenix, who's 4. Okay, and he don't have a lot to say, and he's talking about toys or whatever.
Yeah,
we take a moment and we all pick one person and we just pray for each other. Not nothing big, not nothing fancy, but for us, those are sacred times.
Yeah.
Okay. After that, it's, what are my goals?
Yeah.
And what am I working towards to reach that? So we start with, it's no different than having the rocks in the schedule first, or I should say the boulders, which is God, family. And then after that, it is lots of rocks, lots of pebbles, lots of sand filling in, those times. But we even have it deeper. Then from a physical standpoint, nobody gets my 5:15 hour to 5:30 to 6:30 until my workout starts. And then my 6:30 to 8 is my workout. So nobody gets me before 9 a.m. because that is me getting fueled right. Non-negotiable. Nobody gets me 9 a.m. because I am getting to my best self so I can be at my best for others. And so, those are just little things that I start with. But I think, those of you listening right now, figure out what works for you. Yeah. It might be an afternoon thing, it might be an evening thing. The bottom line is, make sure you do it and have something that you hold sacred to you. And because there will be plenty of notifications on these amazing multi-million-dollar devices that can sometimes be the biggest distraction, because we're doing stuff that everyone else wants us to do versus what we need and ought to be doing.
I love that. And that was something I was talking with one of our team members. It was like, you got to find what works for you, man. Like if you need to wake up at 7 o'clock and that's your jam and you're going to go do family time or work out, that's when you start. Good for you. Like, it's got to be consistent. If you get up at 5, awesome, get it in. And we're like, you got to be consistent in something, because you're being consistent in something now that's just not working.
That's right.
Serving your priorities. You're consistent. You're just not aligned with what you're telling me you want. And I love how you share that. So let's close with this, because I'm always interested with what you've learned. If there was a lesson that you've learned over the last several years that kind of resounds that you would share with somebody else, and you could say, hey, this is what I've taken away over the last few years. What would be that lesson that you would want to either leave, kind of almost like a legacy piece, or just to share with other people that could help them with where they are, move forward?
Mm-hmm. Brian, I'm a big leadership guy, and some of the subjects I didn't talk about so far in my book is leadership. And there's probably 5 to 6 chapters in there about positional versus permissional leadership, leadership currency of today, being on the front lines with your team, not just telling them what to do. So I'm a big leadership, but a lot of times we sometimes get our best material out of what was not modeled to us. Mm-hmm. And I've just realized that, even the people that you're coaching, even people on the line, your employees, yes, you can tell them what to do and they need to do it, could do it, should do it, or they might not get paid if they don't do it.
Right.
But I can tell you, when you and us as business leaders can take a moment for our staff and make sure that we're developing our employees and our staff, not just employing them and telling them what to do every single day, taking that extra moment when I'm talking to somebody and they begin to share something versus saying, oh, that's great. And then start talking about yourself. Tell me more about that. Yeah. Tell me more opens the door for a trust and relationship, especially with the people you're leading. And nobody wants to be told what they need to be doing, should be doing. Ask enough questions to where you can offer some advice, but leave room for autonomy for people to feel out the situation and, do what's best for them. Because I coach a lot of independent contractors. And then I also, definitely have a few employees as well that work directly for T&I's company and many, employees in our school. But I tell you, when I take those extra couple of moments and ask about them or their kids or, hey, what's going on? What's going well about this week? What are your challenges right now that's holding you up from being the best educator that you can here at Valor Global Online? I tell you what, walls come down because me as the employer sees them as a person and they see me as a partner, not a boss. Yeah. And I tell you, and what I've found, Brian, is most people are missing that component. We as business entrepreneurs and leaders and employers, we're so focused on getting the agenda done that we stop and we miss, especially in today's world, this human to human, eyeball to eyeball connection that an extra 4 minutes in that moment with a key employee can change their entire work performance. And if anything, change their entire relationship and longevity they get tied to your mission versus tied to their paycheck.
That is worth the rewind. So something that's stood out to me as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this, Doug, is like some of the most successful people that I've been around, whether it's 4 minutes, like you said, they're asking great questions, 10 minutes, however long you get with them, you just feel like they're engaged. They're all in on it versus, have you ever been in those conversations and you're talking to somebody and it's like, they're over here, they're over there, looking down at their phone. They're like, man, what great advice. I wish someone had given me that earlier in my career, because that as a leader, as a husband, your spouse, dad, all that stuff, this lie I think we've all been sold of like, we can do all these things all simultaneously and just be running around like in the hamster wheel.
Right.
I'm curious, as you've gone through, how could someone improve that skill? Because I think that is like almost like a muscle, right? That you get stronger at it. Is there anything that you would recommend or they could do to get better at that? Like I said, I know you said, ask that, tell me more. Are there any other things like that could trigger somebody to start working this muscle?
Yeah, well, I'm a serial learner.
Yeah.
I have had a hard time becoming a connoisseur of a ton of books, but what I will do is I will take a book and I will dissect it, especially if it hits me and connects with me. And it seems like I'm drawn to leadership books or books that have a lot to do with understanding human to human connection. And one of the first persons I got started with was John Maxwell. And his book. It's been around a long time. I love talking to people. They're like, wow, that sounds like, all right, what book is that? I'm like, 5 Loaves of Leadership. They're like, oh, I already read that. I'm like, well, why don't you go back and apply it this time? If you're dismissing it that quick, clearly there's a reason I'm suggesting it, right? Because you're not doing it. But yeah, one of the best places you can do is really go back and check in with yourself. If right now, if you can, first of all, can you name your key? Let's just say all of us listening have an average of 3 to 7 employees that we work with. Maybe some of us have a lot more, but there's 3 to 7 key partners. Yeah. Do you know their spouse's name? Do you know their kid's name? Do you even know their personal goals outside of your business, your mission? And I think that's a good place just to start of understanding people. Something I did a couple of years ago, my backdrop right now is, I usually have different things that are important for me or I want other people to see. But for a long time, my backdrop here on my wall at my home office was every single family of Valor Global Online.
Nice.
And it was 2 years ago. So we had 70 families in the school. And it was every single family. And I paid my teenage daughter to make it and print them out and put the Smith family, the whoever. And I just took time before the school year even started to where, out of sight, out of mind. Well, if they're in sight, I could see them. I could get to know them through their face. But also I would just say a little prayer for them. I'm like, God, I don't know what the Smith family's going through. But just touch them today. And I tell you what, I didn't realize those little things were connection points that they were small for me. But then when I would see them at our retreats or I'd see them online, they're like, you know my name. And the trust would go through the roof. So I just look for the little things. It doesn't have to be a big thing. I think right now in our mind, we're like, oh, I'm going to do this at Christmas time. Don't wait till Christmas.
Yeah.
Like take an extra 30 seconds tomorrow morning when they're bringing your coffee. Just say, hey, thank you, Jill. I believe in you. Thank you for being a key part of this mission here at X, Y, and Z insurance company. So it's the little things. It's never a big thing.
Man, I love that though. The way you made that simple, yet that's profound, and if we all were to take on that challenge, I'm going to take that on with some of our team because we're living in this virtual world, where our team's spread across all these different states, and to make that connection as best as we can. Those are things we can all do right now, like today.
And interrupt flows. Like if you're getting ready to end a Zoom with a key employee, before you log off, just say, hey, Brian, one more thing. How's your family doing? First of all, it's going to disrupt like, whoa, what? What? Actually, it's been a tough week. Just say, hey, well, you matter here. So let me know if you need a little personal time. I mean, little things like that, they're life-changing to them. And it took you 1 minute to show you care, and you watch their value to the company, and you're not doing it to get. I want you to know we're doing it to give, but you watch what does come back to you just by you taking the time. So it's one of the biggest things. I think a lot of people are missing that stuff, and I am too. We can all get better at it. But little things like that are so important for us as business owners.
When you said it earlier, people want to be validated, and I think that's what you and Tia do better than anybody. I've said, like, the way you build communities, and I just watch it, and then I got to experience some of that in the small group. And I will tell you this. As we close, we took one of the statements Tia shared. She's like, we do hard things in this family. We do this and we do that. I shared that with my boys, right? So we're working out in the gym. And I got to tell you, I was going to shoot you and Tia a note. I was like, I started programming that language in, and they started saying that to themselves when the workout got hard. It's like, Covey's do hard things here. Like I was like, yeah. So I mean, it's that thing that you just put in your family and you can change the trajectory. So I just want to tell you, thank you for what you guys are doing. And God has truly blessed you with, I believe, not only the skills in what you're doing, but how you're using it today. I know you're destined for even bigger things, and you've made an impact on my life and people around me. And just want to say thank you.
Man, you're very welcome. And it's an honor being here. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. So guys, if you want to follow Doug, like I do, and you're going to get a lot of what we talked about today and even more. Doug, what's the best place for them to connect up with you and follow along your journey? And
connect with me over on Instagram, The Real Doug Wood. And of course, if you want anything more from there, you could, I'm real active on the DMs and all that good stuff there. So let's connect over there. That's a great place.
Awesome. Guys, this has been another episode of the Brian Covey Show. I can't wait to listen to this one back personally. And if you would, hit that like, subscribe, leave us some comments. Anything you took away, anything that you want more of, that's how we usually shape up future shows. And we know that we're connecting up with you and serving you in a way. This was all designed around, we launched the podcast. It's all around helping you learn and grow and win. We call it disrupting and dominating in life. And so today you've been given a lot of tools and a lot of inspiration to go do that. So go take action. Let us know how you're doing that and go win the day. Catch you on the next one.
Subscribe, rate, and review The Brian Covey Show today. Go to briancovey.com.